Talk about altitude training, and I'm going to do something a little bit unusual straight away. I'm going to separate my page. I'm going to draw a little line down here. You might be thinking, well, why? What is that for? Well, towards the end of this video, I'm going to sort of reveal an image which we're going to kind of assess how we've described this and how we've gone about sort of considering altitude training. But the first thing I want you guys to realize is that altitude training is up a big hill. Okay, so I mean, we go training and we're up a big hill. Now, this isn't about going to the local park and finding a bit of an incline and jogging up and down it. No. That's hill training, hill climbing training. That's a different sort of notion. Maybe we consider it fartlek. What we're talking about here is finding a mountain, probably a range of mountains, and find it. That's a mountain, by the way, in case you're not sure. It's a bit of volcano-like, isn't it? Now we're finding that. Let me put a little sort of snowy peak on this. And what we want to do is we want to find the height of 2,500 meters, and we want to train at or above this point. Train at or above this point. Now, places in Europe that this is likely to be are places like the Pyrenees, the Alps, the Dolomites. These are areas where we can legitimately go and do training. So we're talking about between, obviously, Pyrenees between France and Spain, the Alps between sort of Switzerland, Italy, France, Germany, and that sort of area, the Dolomites, northern Italy. You know, these are places, and there's many other mountain ranges where you could do it. Or if we were in Africa, it might be in the Atlas Mountains and so on and so on. So this is the kind of place where we're going to do altitude training. Now, this is the crucial bit. Up here, above this line, so if we draw some sort of arbitrary line here, above this line here, the oxygen that's in the air surrounding this mountain, we have got less molecular oxygen in the air. So the air, of course, is a mixture of gases. It's oxygen, it's nitrogen, it's CO2, it's trace elements of neon and argon and all that kind of stuff. But at this height, above 2,500 meters, there's far less oxygen in the air. And the higher we go, the less and less there is, right? We could actually call this a lower PPO2, partial pressure of oxygen. That's kind of a technical term. Now, what happens then, because we go and train at that point, the critical point, I'm going to put it with a big star here, is the body compensates for the lack of oxygen. Okay, so because the body is exposed to less oxygen when training, of course, the body has no, let me go across a bit, the body has no choice but to compensate for that. So what are the benefits? So I'm going to go here, sort of green good stuff, right? So benefits, why is this useful? Why might we consider this? So these are positives we're interested in here. We've got up arrow, increase in red blood cell count. So red blood cells are literally created in your bone marrow, in that stem cell tissue that we call it erythropoiesis. It doesn't matter, but anyway, the point is red blood cells will increase in volume within the blood. The blood actually becomes more viscous as a result because, of course, compared to plasma, there's a greater quantity of red blood cells. Therefore, plus we get an increased O2 carrying capacity. Now, don't forget that what red blood cells do, amongst one or two other things, what have I written there? Amongst one or two other things, that was meant to be capacity, they transport oxygen in the form of oxyhemoglobin. So, of course, the more red blood cells we have, the greater the capacity. This means, and this is where we get performance impacts, we can perform at higher, not altitude, at higher intensity aerobically. So think about that. At higher intensity aerobically. So we can effectively work, this is once we come back down to altitude, of course, we can effectively work at a higher rate, more energy release, but we do more of that work aerobically because, of course, we can deliver more oxygen to the working muscle while it's working. That's really positive. Almost there. We also get a this is obviously once the effects have happened, we get a decreased production of lactic acid because, of course, less work is done anaerobically of lactic acid. So we get less lactic acid, leading to less oxygen debt, of course. And then finally, guys, we get a faster recovery. So these are really, really positive developments if we are an aerobic athlete. And that's the point I want to make. If we are an aerobic athlete, it could be a games player, but it's more likely to be a marathon or a long distance runner or a distance swimmer or a triathlete or a road cyclist. This is going to be positive for aerobic performance. However, There are negatives, or what I'm going to refer to them as limitations. What are these limitations? Well, some of them are really quite simple. It's not very practical, and because it's not practical, it's expensive. I'm not being funny, but you've got to go up a big mountain, you've got to live up a big mountain, train up a big mountain, eat up a big mountain, etc., etc. And if you don't live up a big mountain, that means that for the vast majority of people, it just isn't going to be possible. Secondly, the benefits are temporary. That's why people will do this shortly before a big competition, because once you come back down to sea level, say, you're going to de-adapt from the experience that you've had. Okay, it's not immediate, but it does happen. We could experience altitude sickness, which should not be taken lightly, guys. It's a really unpleasant condition. If you want to get technical, it's called hypoxia, and that can make you very nauseous, really quite poorly. It can give you headaches, dizziness, etc. And the other thing, guys, is when we get to altitude, performance decreases when you get there. Performance, down arrow, decreases when you get to altitude. When you first arrive there, you actually perform less well. Why? Because, of course, you can't process as much oxygen because there's not as much about. So I said to you I was going to split my screen. What was the whole purpose of this? This is what we kind of want to finish on. Let's see how this resource here benefits us. Do we agree that it's good for cardiovascular endurance? Absolutely. Aerobic fitness. Do we agree that it's aerobic in 2 kilometers? Well, we would say 2.5 kilometers or 2,500 meters. It says here partial pressure of oxygen is lower, leading to initial loss of performance. Good. It says adaptations occur. Good. Increased red blood cell. Good. Increased hemoglobin. That's an interesting one, of course. More red blood cell, more hemoglobin. Stronger respiratory muscles as well there, guys. So the muscles of the diaphragm, the intercostals, the sternocleidomastoid, of course, they're having to work harder. They adapt and strengthen. Positives: better endurance, better aerobic potential. We get some initial losses when we get there. Altitude sickness is temporary and it's expensive. Nice resource to finish off with. There's our altitude training. Thanks.